Chapter 9. Waiting. It never got any easier to drive away from Bella, but tonight it was harder than usual. Of course, it didn't help matters that I was leaving her with a pack of immature, restless, out of control. No, I couldn't let myself think that way, or I'd never get through the evening. I watched in the rearview mirror until Bella and Jacob were out of sight. The moment I could no longer see her, I felt a stabbing pain in my chest, as if I were feeling my heart stop beating all over again. It was everything I could do not to turn around and go back for her, tell her I had changed my mind. There was too much danger and uncertainty with her intruder still on the loose. She'd understand. She had already given me many chances to stop her from going. I knew without any doubt, if I called her and asked her to come back to the boundary line, told her I needed her to come home with me, she would comply. Which was why I made myself keep driving. As difficult as it was for me to understand, spending time in the push with the friends she had made during my absence was important to Bella, and I promised not to let her miss out on any experiences she deemed important. That promise felt especially meaningful with graduation and her intended transformation date looming before us, nearer every second of the day. I tried to occupy my mind on the drive home, and thinking about graduation and making the most of Bella's remaining human days had given me an idea. I hadn't thought of anything specific, and I had little more than a vague idea of what I wanted to do, but that didn't stop Alice from already being one step ahead of me. As soon as I stepped through the front door, she was at my side.
"I'd love to help, of course, but just so you know she's not going to be happy, and we're not surprising her. I'm not doing anything to upset Bella like that. She is almost officially my sister, you know."
I glared at her, but it did nothing to deter the smile on her face. Alice was far too eager for Bella's change to let my feelings on the matter put a damper on her excitement. "Fine, no surprises," I said grudgingly. "Now can you tell me how many of her friends will actually come to a graduation party if we have it here? The point is to let her spend as much time with them as she can, and that won't work if they're all too nervous to show up." Alice closed her eyes for a moment, a look of serenity on her face as we both watched the future unfold. While a number of Bella's friends still harbored some ill feelings toward me, it didn't appear that anyone would pass up the opportunity to finally see where the elusive, mysterious Cullen family lived. Everyone invited would accept the invitation, and Bella would be able to spend the evening celebrating the end of her high school career with her classmates. I was no longer foolish enough to think that a desire not to lose her school friends had any effect on the choice she had made. I had been watching her start to withdraw from even those she felt closest to for quite some time. I wasn't entirely sure if it was intentional. After all, she was fairly preoccupied with rogue vampires and werewolf gatherings. But whether or not she intended to, I could see Bella was already preparing herself for her imminent goodbyes. "Alice," I asked as she opened her eyes, "you don't see any chance of Bella changing her mind, right?" She smiled angelically at me.
"You would know if I had, wouldn't you?"
"Right," I said skeptically, "like you've never shielded your thoughts from me."
"But why would I want to shield something like that?"
"Because if Bella was showing even the slightest bit of doubt, you know I would latch on to it and use it to change her mind."
"I promise you, there's no doubt whatsoever that she wants to be one of us. She's ready to be part of this family. The only variation I've ever seen is how she's changed."
She paused, looked deeply into my eyes, her tone more serious than I'd heard in a long time.
"She wants it to be you, Edward."
"But not enough to agree to marry me." It was impossible to disguise the hurt in my voice.
"It's true. Marriage is the last thing on her mind right now, and as much as I'd like to, I can't tell you I've seen visions of wedding bells. She's not there yet. But sometimes I can clearly see you being the one that changes her. And since I know how stubborn you are, I can only assume that means that she's considering agreeing to your proposal."
My eyes widened in surprise and hope.
"Don't get ahead of yourself," Alice warned. "Remember, you haven't even proposed to her properly yet."
"I know, and I feel like I'm running out of opportunities. Graduation is going to be here before we know it, and right now, she seems determined to stick to that deadline."
"You'll think of something,"
she said, grinning impishly before starting to mentally sing the alphabet backward. Subtle. I retreated to my room, trying not to look at the clock on the way.
It felt like it had been hours since I had left Bella, but I was sure it had been more like minutes. There was no use in driving myself crazy worrying about her, so instead I forced myself into the best distraction I currently had available, staring at my mother's wedding ring and imagining it on Bella's finger.
It all seemed so simple. We had found each other. We were in love. We both knew we would never want anyone else for the rest of eternity. So what was stopping us? Bella was more than willing to give up everything in her human life for immortality, yet she couldn't fathom binding herself to me in this way. The conundrum once again filled me with doubts that my rational mind couldn't silence. Did she really want me forever, or did she simply want forever? I was more than aware that Bella had developed a glorified picture of what our existence was like, and what hers would soon be like if everything went according to her plans. I often wondered if she would go through with it, if she knew what the burn in our throats felt like every time we were near humans, if she truly understood the pain that came with our self-control and the empty, hollow feeling of never getting what our bodies naturally craved. How could she possibly doom herself to that life? I was certain she didn't think about such things. She thought about never having to be afraid again, never worrying about Victoria or the Volturi coming after her. She saw herself strong and unbreakable, immortal. Wasn't that what all humans wanted? The secret to eternal life, beauty, and youth? Was I the reason for her desire to leave the fragile, mortal human race, or was I merely the means to achieve it? I quickly forced the thought out of my mind, almost hearing Bella tell me I was being ridiculous. Still, while it seemed like she truly loved me, despite my deplorable nature, I could never completely shake that feeling of doubt. She had forgiven me for all of my sins, even those I had committed before she knew me. Yet how could one as pure and blameless as Bella want to spend one lifetime, let alone eternity, with a creature like me? I stared at the ring, the only real tie I had left to my own human life, and wondered how much simpler things would be if I could only be human for Bella. I wanted so badly to give her the life that she deserved, to give her me, if that's what she really desired, without making her sacrifice anything. But that was impossible. She wanted us to be the same, and if I couldn't be human for her, there was really only one choice. I'd be lying to myself if I didn't admit it would make life a lot easier. Although I knew there was no way I would ever hurt Bella, that fact didn't do anything to lessen the agonizing burn I still felt every time we were together. I had grown used to it, though not immune. In fact, I was certain that even after a lifetime together, it wouldn't take the pain away. The only thing that could take away the call of her blood was to stop it from pumping through her veins, but wishing for such a thing would make me more of a monster than I already was. So many times I had felt certain I would give anything just to know she was safe, to be sure nothing would ever take her from me, yet I couldn't take her humanity for my peace of mind. I could never reconcile damning her to a life of darkness in order to keep her light shining forever in mine. But if she's already made her choice... With a sigh, I placed the ring back inside of its box, and returned it to its hopefully temporary home inside the nightstand. I could feel the weight of the ring, even though I was no longer holding it, and my mind wandered back to the other half of our confusing equation. We were talking about forever, and I needed forever to begin with an infutable knowledge that I was hers, and she was mine. Although I had no way of knowing when or if she would change her mind, somehow I could envision what the moment would look like. In my mind, I had already placed my mother's ring on Bella's finger, and pictured it bringing a smile to her face and light to her eyes. I could so clearly see that instant when she would finally say yes, and it was that image I now found myself clinging to as I felt the seconds tick by. Cringing, I wondered how long a pack of mangy wolves could keep her entertained. Once again, all I could do was wait. Lately, it felt like waiting was all I ever did. I was waiting for Victoria to be close enough for us to strike. I was waiting for Bella to decide whether or not she would be willing to marry me, to get what she claimed she wanted more than anything. Waiting for the end. Waiting for the beginning. Waiting for the change I dreaded, yet couldn't deny the allure of. I waited, with morbid anticipation, for the day I would no longer have to fear losing what matters to me most. At 11:30, the phone rang. "Bella?" I breathed, relieved. "Sorry to disappoint you, bloodsucker," Jacob answered coldly, though his voice was only a whisper. "What's wrong?" I asked, panicking. I flew down the stairs and was already outside, climbing into the Volvo, when he spoke again. "Relax, will you? Everything's fine. Bella fell asleep, that's all. She's right next to me, and I'm driving as we speak." "Oh, don't sound so surprised," he said, his voice scathing. "You didn't really think I'd let anything happen to her, did you?" "No. If I had, I wouldn't have let her go." "Let her?" he spat, indignant. "You know I'm getting a little tired of this controlling thing you've got going on. At some point, Bella's going to get tired of it too." "That's not your concern. And, as I'm sure you know, Bella is perfectly capable of speaking her mind. If she's having a problem with my behavior, she'll tell me." "Yeah, well, I'd wait in line to buy tickets to see that show," he muttered. "Anyway, we'll be at the line in a few minutes. I assume you don't want me to just drive her home myself." "There'll be no need for that. I'm pulling up right now." "Of course you are." With that, the phone went silent. I parked the car and waited with as much patience as I could muster. I saw headlights at the same moment I heard a string of insults coming from Jacob's mind. It was easier to ignore them once I saw Bella. I could see her sleeping form in the passenger seat, and the moment the car stopped, she startled herself awake. I listened silently as Jacob explained that he had called me for her. I waited patiently while they exchanged pleasantries regarding the evening, but when Jacob started talking about how nice it was having her there with him, I got out of the car and started to pace. "Yeah, he's not so patient, is he?" I heard him say. "Go ahead, but come back soon, okay?" I bit back a snarl, though even I knew it was unjustified. The smile on her face told me she had a good time, and as far as I could tell, there wasn't anything wrong with her. Jacob had fulfilled his end of the bargain and kept her safe, so at least as far as Bella was concerned, I couldn't fault him. They exchanged good nights, and Bella rushed toward me, smiling widely in the darkness. Her radiance lit up the night sky. "Bella," I breathed, as I scooped her up. I never fully realized how empty I felt without her until she was in my arms again.
"Hi. Sorry I'm so late. I fell asleep and—"
"I know. Jacob explained," I said, stopping her. There was no reason for her to apologize. "Are you tired? I could carry you," I offered, as she walked, still half asleep beside me.
"I'm fine."
"Let's get you home and in bed. Did you have a nice time?"
"Yeah, it was amazing, Edward."
Despite her exhaustion, I could see the spark of excitement in her eyes.
"I wish you could have come. I can't even explain it. Jake's dad told us all the old legends, and it was like magic."
I watched her brilliant smile, and for one fleeting moment nothing mattered. Not werewolves, rivalries, treaties, or boundary lines. In that instant, Bella's happiness transcended all of it. "You'll have to tell me about it," I said, smiling. "After you've slept."
"I won't get it right,"
she mumbled, yawning. I laughed as I buckled her in, hoping she would get some more sleep on the drive home. "Until next time, leech," Jacob thought as he pulled away. Bella waved at him, but he was way too busy glaring at me to notice. I smiled to myself as I realized this would always be his biggest mistake. He was too busy hating me to think about what that hate was doing to Bella. I had paid enough attention to know she was happier when we at least tried to get along. As I had hoped, Bella drifted back off to sleep, and I was able to set up our evening's plans. I knew she was uncomfortable with the precautions we were taking, worrying that she was putting us out, but my family was more than willing to go whatever lengths was necessary to keep her safe. After all, we still didn't know precisely what we were up against. I dialed the number without taking my eyes off of Bella. Even after all of our nights together, I never tired of watching her sleep. "We're almost to Bella's house," I said when I had Esme on the phone. "I won't be long tonight. I just need to bring the car home, and then I can head right back. Is Alice on her way?"
"Actually, I am. Alice went with Jasper along with Rose and Emmett. They're going to check out the situation in Seattle."
"Has something new happened?"
"Just more of the same. There's been several more deaths. Carlyle is worried the Volturi will intervene at any time, and the last thing we need right now is them stopping in for a visit." I fought back a growl building in my chest. They were the only ones more eager than Bella for her to join our race.
For Aro, the reason wasn't simply that she was a human who knew too much. He had taken a particular liking to her, speculating what special ability she would have after her transformation, given her mind's strange ability to block his and my power. Is Carlyle in Seattle too?
No, he's working late at the hospital tonight. We had hoped to go there together in the morning. Will you need one of us to keep watch while you run home tomorrow morning?
I sighed. I suppose it isn't really necessary. I'll only be gone a few minutes, and I'm sure Jacob is close by. No one is going to get past him. She smiled, obviously satisfied.
Thank you. I really think it's best if we all go.
It's hard to believe how out of control this has gotten, and how fast.
I know. Let's hope it ends just as quickly. Maybe if whoever is responsible sees us and realizes they're being watched, they'll move on.
I was silent. We both knew the chances of that were slim. If we were in fact dealing with newborns, they wouldn't be thinking rationally enough to care if they were being monitored. "I'll see you in a few minutes," I finally said.
"I'm on my way."
Esme was already at the house when we pulled up, and so was Jacob. I couldn't see him, but I could hear him. As soon as he realized I was there, he went back to trying to block me by thinking about inconsequential things, slipping in an occasional insult now and again. It was getting surprisingly easy to ignore him. "Bella, sweetheart, we're home."
"What?"
she muttered. "You just need to wake up enough to go inside and say goodnight to Charlie. Then you can fall right back to sleep in my arms."
"He's going to be mad I'm so late,"
she said, waking up slightly. Jacob called him as well, so he wouldn't worry. He's not upset at all. Charlie was never upset when Jacob was involved. I wondered how he would feel if he knew Jacob's secret, though I had a feeling consorting with werewolves would still rank higher than dating a vampire on his list of acceptable activities.
"I'll see you soon?"
Bella asked with a smile. "Very soon," I promised, kissing her. I drove home as fast as my car would take me, and ran back at record speed. Esme smiled warmly at me when I came up beside her. "Anything to report?" I asked.
"Besides the presence of Bella's own personal watchdog?"
she teased. "Persistent, isn't he?"
"He cares about her."
Her voice was chiding, and I could sense her mothering instinct taking over. She was the only one of us who managed to harbor absolutely no ill will towards the wolves. "I know he does," I sighed.
"And this is Bella we're talking about. It doesn't hurt to have an extra set of eyes watching over her, at least until she's strong enough to take care of herself."
She raised a knowing eyebrow at me, and I couldn't help but smile. Even with Alice's visions and Jasper's empathy, somehow Esme always seemed to know me just a little better than the rest of my family. She knew that no matter what I felt about Jacob personally, a part of me would always be grateful for him helping take care of Bella, both now and when I had been absent. She also knew that no longer having any need to keep him around was, in my mind, just about the most appealing aspect of what life would be like after Bella's transformation.
"I'll let you know if I hear anything from Alice."
"Thank you, and thanks for coming over here tonight."
"I'm happy to do it. Tell Bella pleasant dreams for me."
"I will." As I climbed noiselessly through Bella's window, I thought I heard a low howl from somewhere in the darkness.
"Is Jacob out there?"
Bella asked, and I wondered for a moment if she had heard it too. "Yes, somewhere, and Esme's on her way home." The look on her face made me wish I hadn't said anything, though I couldn't understand why she wasn't happier knowing she was never left without someone keeping watch.
"It's so cold and wet. This is silly,"
she complained. "It's only cold to you, Bella." She looked like she wanted to protest, but instead she yawned. I smiled, pulling her into my embrace. "You've had a long evening, and you need your sleep." She nodded, yawning again, as she trudged to the bathroom for her nightly routine. Her eyes were half closed when she came back, and she crawled into bed, pulling me toward her drowsily. I held her tightly to me, wishing as she drifted to sleep that her thick quilt weren't necessary. I wanted to be closer, but I also didn't want her shivering from the cold. "Esme wishes you pleasant dreams." "As do I, my love," I whispered, but she had already slipped back into unconsciousness. Despite our wishes for only happy dreams, Bella slept restlessly, murmuring incoherently for hours before finally settling into what seemed like a dreamless state. I ran my fingers through her silky hair and sang softly to her, hoping to coax her nightmares away. Eventually, her breathing slowed and she grew silent. When I was certain my movement wouldn't disturb her, I turned to the book that was sitting on her nightstand. I was always curious what story was currently occupying her mind, and I wasn't surprised to find Wuthering Heights sitting there, tattered and worn from its countless readings. I knew she had been reading it again, though I couldn't understand why. I always thought in order for a story to be enjoyable, the reader needed to be able to relate to the characters in at least some small way. Heathcliff and Catherine were cruel, selfish, spiteful, everything Bella was not, and I didn't comprehend her fascination with their relationship. Determined to find some redeemable quality in the characters Bella seemed to love so much, I picked up her worn copy and started reading. I had read it before, of course. There were few of the classics I hadn't read during my years of endless nights, but this time I was surprised to find myself commiserating with Heathcliff. Though I could never condone his drastic actions, I had to admit I understood him better than I had before. He had been forced to watch the woman he loved choose someone else, and the jealousy had driven him mad. The extremes to which that particular emotion can drive a person had always somewhat been lost on me, but since Bella, I started to gain a new understanding. Still, no matter how jealous, how miserable it made him watching his beloved Catherine in the arms of another, while Edgar remained in her favor, nothing could make Heathcliff act on a desire to harm him. As long as Heathcliff believed Catherine to be happy with Edgar, he would do nothing to disturb that happiness. Just as I knew, I would never harm Jacob, even if Bella were to have chosen him over me. In the stillness of the night, as if Bella had figured out how to read my mind, her eyes shot open and her body shook. She pressed her warm cheek against my chest and breathed deeply. "Did I wake you?" I asked quietly, dropping her book carelessly in an attempt to hold her close. She seemed so distressed. "No," she said, relaxing almost instantly as I wrapped my arms around her. "I had a bad dream." "Do you want to tell me about it?" "Too tired," she muttered. "Maybe in the morning, if I remember." "In the morning." "What are you reading?" she asked, her eyes already closed again. I felt like a child who had been caught doing something they weren't supposed to, though I couldn't entirely explain the feeling. "Wuthering Heights," I admitted softly, hoping she had already fallen back asleep. "I thought you didn't like that book." "You left it out." Her breathing slowed, and I could tell she was nearly asleep again. Then, for some reason, I wanted her to understand. I needed her to know that no matter what pain it put me through, even if it meant tolerating that mongrel for as long as he lived, I would always put Bella's happiness before my own. "Besides," I continued, wondering if she was still listening, "the more time I spend with you, the more human emotions seem comprehensible to me. I'm discovering that I can sympathize with Heathcliff in ways I didn't think were possible before." She breathed. "I swore I'd never hurt you. As long as you care about him, as long as it's in my power, I will never hurt him." I waited for a response, some sign that she trusted what I was telling her, but her steady breathing told me she was asleep once more. I listened carefully, making sure her previous nightmare didn't return, but the rest of the night passed without sound. When the first glimpse of light shone through her window, Bella started to stir. "Good morning, my darling," I whispered as she nuzzled into the crook of my arm.
"Always when you're here,"
she said, smiling up at me through still tired eyes. "Do you want to tell me about your dream now?"
"I don't remember much about it. I know there was a storm, and I was cold. I'm pretty sure I was on a beach, and I think Jake was there." She stopped, her eyes suddenly wide and a little embarrassed. "Go on," I encouraged, making sure my expression was still relaxed. "That's it, really. The rest was kind of a blur. I just knew I was relieved when I woke up, and I was happy when you were here to warm me up." I laughed. "I warmed you up?" I asked skeptically. "But I'm freezing." She ducked her eyes away from me, blushing, and I realized what she'd meant. "Your skin might be," she said shyly, "but I still feel warm and safe when you're with me."
"I'm always here, Bella," I said, leaning down to press my lips to hers. I felt her warmth against my skin as her heart started to speed up. I was enjoying the moment, thrilled as I always was when she was so unwilling to let me go. But when her breathing started to grow erratic and her fingers laced into my hair, I realized I would again have to be the one to stop it. "I'll be back soon," I promised, trying not to see the disappointment on her face as I pulled away. I ran quickly home, and when I arrived to find the house empty, I remembered that the rest of my family was in Seattle. I felt somewhat guilty as I remembered Esme's words.
"I think it's best if we all go."
My whole family was in Seattle, doing their best to get the situation under control, while I stayed in Forks. Of course they understood that there was no way I was leaving Bella unprotected, but I still wished there was something I could do to help. Just as I was about to call Alice, I saw a note in her handwriting on top of the piano.
"Edward, we're fine. Stop worrying. Go be with Bella. I know you want to help, but remember, we're doing this for her, too. You're helping us by keeping her safe."
I smiled, thankful as I often was that there was really no point in arguing with Alice.